before Kentucky had highways, before it had counties, before Daniel Boone ever carved a trail through Cumberland Gap. The mountains were already named, not by maps, by seasons, and the old people, the real old ones, said winter didn't end. It passed through. And if you lit a fire too late on the last night of February, you might see what was passing. This is Kentucky Melody. So pull up close to the fire. Get comfortable. 'Cause tonight, I've got a story I found from an old friend. One that's been sitting in these hills a long time. And trust me, you're going to want to hear this one all the way through. Now, this part's true. In 1769, Daniel Boone recorded accounts of hairy men in Kentucky forests. Not demons, not devils, just tall, wild figures seen in winter months. Frontier journals from the late 1700s mentioned something else too. They called it the wildman of the woods. But here's what's strange. Sightings were more often reported in deep cold, late freezes, the last storms before thaw, and the Scots-Irish settlers who came into Appalachia brought something older with them. A winter figure called the Kalach, an ancient mountain hag said to shape the land, carry frost in her cloak, and walk the ridges until spring forced her away. She wasn't evil. She was winter itself. And when settlers reached Kentucky, those old beliefs didn't disappear. They changed, because here in the hills there were already stories. The Cherokee told of spirit beings tied to seasonal crossings. The Nununuwi, stone-skinned mountain beings, were said to move between the physical and spirit worlds during times of transition. And late February, that was considered a thin time, a crossing time. Calvin Brewer didn't know any of that. He just knew it was the last weekend of February. He and two friends camped near a sandstone arch in what we now call Red River Gorge. Back then, it was quieter. The kind of quiet where wind travels through bare branches like a whisper. They built a fire about 11:30 p.m. That was mistake number one. In old Appalachian almanacs, and this is documented, February 28th was sometimes called Winter's Gate. Farmers believed you shouldn't begin anything new that night, and you certainly shouldn't burn a farewell fire past midnight, because midnight belonged to the turning. Around 11:47 p.m., the woods went silent. Hunters across Appalachia have described that silence. It's not peaceful, it's suspended, as if the forest is waiting. Calvin said the air felt heavy, like before a thunderstorm, but the sky was clear. Then came the steps, measured, slow, not circling randomly, pacing, like something tracing the edge of firelight. When it finally appeared, it didn't rush. It stood at the edge of visibility, tall, broad, shoulders wider than any man Calvin had worked with in timber. Steam rose from its body, but not from breath alone. It was like cold clung to it. And here's what matters. It wasn't looking at them. It was looking at the fire. In European folklore, the Kalach was said to drink warmth from the land before leaving. In Appalachian superstition, winter spirits were believed to gather the last of the frost. Calvin didn't know that, but he said the fire changed. The flames bent, not from wind, from absence, like the heat was being pulled forward. It extended one long arm toward the fire, Fingers thick, slow, not aggressive, deliberate, and the temperature around them dropped instantly. The flames thinned, not from lack of wood, from lack of warmth. Now, here's where it gets older than Kentucky. In 19th century mountain belief, fire represented life, and if something not living warmed itself at your fire, you had built it at the wrong hour. Ray whispered, "Don't feed it," because feeding the fire would feed what stood before them. When it stepped into firelight, Calvin said the face didn't resolve clearly. It was distorted, like heat shimmer, only cold. The Cherokee described certain spirit beings during seasonal transitions as not fully solid, visible, but not entirely here, and frost clung to its hair. Not melting, growing thicker, like winter itself stood upright. And this part, Calvin never told without lowering his voice. It didn't speak, but they felt something. Not words, a knowing, a message pressed into them like cold into skin. This night is mine. In Appalachian folklore, certain nights were considered claimed. Solstice, equinox, the last frost. February 28th marked the boundary. A night winter passed through the ridges one final time, and the old belief was simple. Don't interrupt the crossing. When they stopped feeding the fire, it lowered its arm. The flames shrank, and the figure stepped back into the trees. Not crashing, not running, fading. The silence remained until sunrise, and when morning came, they found tracks, shallow, ending in frost. Small patches of frozen earth that hadn't melted when the rest had. Old mountain women called that winter's footprint. Maybe Calvin saw a trick of shadow. Maybe it was something flesh and blood. But history gives us something uncomfortable. Across cultures, across mountains, across centuries, there are repeated accounts of winter beings. Not monsters, not hunters. Seasonal forces personified, figures that appear during the turning and disappear once the land shifts. Daniel Boone wrote of hairy men in Kentucky woods. Cherokee oral traditions speak of spirit crossings in late winter. Scots-Irish settlers feared the Kyleakwakin mountain ridges before thaw. And in Red River Gorge, 3 men built a fire at the wrong hour, on the wrong night, and something came to warm its hands. Now, I want you to think about something. Have you ever been in the woods when everything went quiet all at once? Not peaceful quiet, but that heavy, waiting kind of silence? If you've spent any time in Red River Gorge, Daniel Boone National Forest, or even just out behind your house here in Kentucky, you know the difference. So let me ask you this. If you were sitting by that fire on the last night of February, and something stepped just beyond the light, would you keep feeding the flames, or would you let them die? And here's another one. Have you ever heard any old mountain sayings about winter walking or certain nights being claimed? If your grandparents ever warned you about a specific date, a fire superstition, or something strange tied to the seasons, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments. Because the best stories in Kentucky don't come from books. They come from families, and sometimes from the woods. Now, if you enjoy stories rooted in real Appalachian folklore, the kind woven from documented journals, mountain superstition, and the stories passed down before electricity reached these hollers, make sure you're subscribed to Kentucky Melody, because around here we don't just tell scary stories. We uncover the old ones, the ones written in journals, whispered by grandparents, buried in the ridgelines of Kentucky. And if you've ever felt the woods go silent around you, if you've ever built a fire and felt the cold press in instead of fade, tell me about it in the comments. Because these hills remember more than we think, and winter always comes back.